Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Traversing Entrepreneurship podcast, a show for business owners who set out to do something different and did not stop there. This is Dall'Olmo coming to you from Traverse City, Michigan, the city that inspired the name of this show. With over 19 years of experience in the finance industry, I've heard my fair share of success as well as horror stories in business. On this podcast, I enjoy sitting down with a variety of entrepreneurs to talk about what it takes to build a successful business, including all the ups and downs that come with doing something different and paving your own way in life. In today's episode, I'll be interviewing Randy Martinez, a personal and cultural transformation specialist with over 20 years of executive leadership experience in people strategies and social innovation. He has shaped inclusive cultures at Fortune 500 companies, Fortune 5 companies actually, and global brands while also navigating personal challenges and reinnovation. Join us today as we discuss his exit from the corporate realm and his movement into writing and creating his own brand, The Transformation Circle. We'll also talk about his new book, The Art of Transformation, and how it invites readers to begin again. Welcome to the show, Randy. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much, Derek. I appreciate it.
So, Randy, you and I have talked already before, but can you give our listeners a little bit about your story, more of like a sense of what life was like before you started the Transformation Circle and how you got there?
Sure. Yeah. No, I appreciate the conversation. I mean, it's something I've been trying to convey to people about corporate life. And what it can do to you and what it can't. And so I do highlight a lot of my life before I wrote this book. But I had a great corporate career, 17 years with CVS Health. And then I spent 2 years with Pizza Hut Global. And I ran culture transformation in both organizations. Early on at CVS, I did work in communications and corporate affairs or community relations. And so a lot of the work that I did was community-based, people-based, people strategies, culture shaping, et cetera. Like I said, I got to CVS in 2005, built a culture of giving. The first 6 years, we took our corporate philanthropy and went from being everything to everyone to having one focus, and which at the time was a program called CVS Caremark or CVS Pharmacy All Kids Can, which was a $25 million 5-year investment to support children with disabilities. It was an incredible program. And then from there, I moved into what's called strategic diversity management. And in that time, I built a lot of internal networking systems to get people connected, to build culture, et cetera. And I spent the next literally, I want to say, like 10, 11 years working inside every division of the company. I worked in pharmacy benefits management, did culture shaping there, worked very closely with the business on developing products and services that were catered or focused on diverse marketplaces. I worked in shared services. I did work in lobbying on issues from insulin pricing to, making sure that we were aligning with legislators on all the cool things we were doing out in the community. And then I went over to the retail organization, built a team, and had oversight on all the services and products that we were delivering, but really, again, focused at the diverse marketplace. And so, and then COVID happened, and then George Floyd happened. And that really took my work to a whole different level. And I started to experience absolute burnout. I experienced burnout twice, actually, during that time frame. And I realized at that point that something needed to change. And I thought it was the size of the company that needed to change. And I thought it was the environment that needed to change. So I was recruited by Pizza Hut to kind of take on the big role in my function, which was Chief Equity Officer of Pizza Hut US. And within the 2 years that I was there, I was promoted 3 times to becoming Chief Global Equity and Social Impact Officer. And what I learned was that as much as you think you're valued, they're just adding more to your plate. And the crazy thing, Derek, was that I was traveling every 2 weeks from Rhode Island, which meant I would have to drive to Boston at 2:30 in the morning on Mondays every 2 weeks, jump on the 5:30, 6 a.m. flight to or to Dallas, drive to Plano, Texas, walk right into the office. I would work straight through with meetings, dinners, whatever it was with my teams, fly out on Wednesday or Thursday and come back to my daughter, who I'd leave here by herself. She was living with me at the time while she was in high school, and it was just my health went south. My everything was just my mood, my everything just changed within me, and then finally the layoffs happened. DEI took a turn, and so, the business wasn't doing great. And so I was one of the, handful of people, I think like 85, 90 people who were cut at that time. And that's when I had to make some serious decisions. And that's been a turning point for me.
So, I mean, there's a lot of stuff in that, 5 minutes
A
that you
lot.
just went on there.
Yeah,
Um, but it's like, okay, if we start at the beginning, you had ambitions to kind of climb the corporate ladder.
that's right.
You climbed the corporate ladder, and I'm summarizing for you, and correct me if I make mistakes here. It's like ambitions to climb the corporate ladder. You climbed the corporate ladder to be seemingly at the pinnacle of where, your role could be within the
That's right.
corporations, and then the bottom fell out,
The
right? It's
bottom
just,
fell out.
and it was nothing against, you specifically. It was just, hey, corporate, it's not about you, right? What's the line? It's not you, it's me. it's,
Right.
so
It's
it's the,
what we signed up for.
right.
That's what we signed up for. I knew that. Right. And so,
Inside the corporate world, you're an expendable asset, So, how does one kind of grapple with that for one? And then how do you shift that into inspiring people from that, as opposed to just kind of being like, you know, angry people that you see on the internet now?
yeah, no, that's a fantastic question, and I think it's one of the most important questions right now because, to your point, a lot of people on the internet are grappling with that right now. What do I do with myself? And it's interesting because in the roles that I had, you're trained in leadership, and you're trained to lead people to think vision, mission, values of the organization. And so everything you do, you develop to make sure that the culture is going to drive business results. And it's almost like the Marines, right? We train Marines to kill, and we get them to, like they show in movies, to pray to their guns, to think about their enemy in a very different way. So we think about our competitors in an environment like that in a very different way. We think about our culture in a very different way. And so what happens is you tailor and you cultivate the talent to place their identity in an organization. And so when somebody leaves the organization, they leave their identity and their purpose and who everything they are. And so they find themselves very lost. And so that was, for me personally, I look at my life before corporate and, all the ups and downs. And, I've always been the kind of person to get up when I fall really hard. So I've almost trained myself to be ready for a moment. And I never knew what that moment was. And I think it was this moment. Um, and look, it happened on a Wednesday in May of 2024. When I got the call, I knew it was coming, and I knew the night before it was coming. And I think that Monday, and I write this in the book. That Monday, I told a very good friend of mine. I said, I figured out what I'm going to do with my life, and I'm going to inspire the world. And she looked at me like, okay, great. What does that mean?
Yeah.
So, like, what are you going to do? And I'm like, well, I like to write, and I think I'm a good public speaker, so I want to go out and speak about my life and the stories, the things that happened in my personal life that drove my ambition, like you mentioned, um and got me to where I was, but then how it all fell out, and everything that and it's about how you get up and go on. And so
Yeah. Because I mean, you had at least a framework within the corporate world of, here's kind of everything you need. You were designing it, but you were designing a framework for them, right? There is no framework for yourself.
none.
So it's, once you're once that's taken away from you, which is I think why so many people struggle when, they're grappling with something like that, is that now they have to go back and say, okay, here was all the things I was doing before. I can't do all that by myself. What am I supposed to do now? And it's like information overload.
Totally. And you know what's fascinating about that is that, I think about some of the, because, every so many years when you're in an organization like that, the vision, mission, values, right? Depending on where the business is going, all that gets modified or it changes, right? And so now you're aligned to a different vision, et cetera. And when you think about some of the values, accountability, integrity, collaboration, you implement those things, and every strategy, every idea, every product, every service you develop, you align it to that for the company. But then you leave and you're like, wait, do I really have the integrity for me? Do I, am I really like what's accountability in my personal life right now? Right. And
Right.
suddenly everything you're lost with those things. And so that's a challenge, and something that me personally, to then pivot my life, I had to really look at those values that I supported and find my set of values. I had to figure out what it was I needed to do to accomplish, to write a book, to build a site, to start a business. What did I need to do to make that happen? That were my values.
Sure. So what did you do first after you kind of the dust had settled? You kind of sat down and said, okay, I'm going to go inspire people, whether it be writing, public speaking, etc. How did you put that all together so that you could then hold yourself accountable, have the ambition for yourself as opposed to for somebody else?
Yeah. Um, so what happened is all my life, I've wanted to write, and I've written since I was as far back as I can remember. And I'll share this part with you is that I Spanish was my first language, English was my second language, and so as a kid, as I was learning English, a heavy accent, the kids would make fun of me and beat me up for whatever reason, and so I would write my thoughts on paper, and that's how I would learn how to write. And so I always kept little journals, pieces of paper, and I carried these things my entire life. If you look at everything I've got today, those I have a huge backpack with all my writings, pictures, things that I've written as a kid, as a teenager, in college, through my 20s, etc. So I've always wanted to write. And every New Year's, I would put together my New Year's resolutions and I would say, I'm going to start a chapter of a story, which I never did. and so, and so what happened is, so going back to 2017, I have a good friend of mine who founded an organization called the Elijah Project in Rhode Island. Started with $48.50. Today, it's an $8 million organization that feeds about 150,000 families a year. And now he's moving into working with veterans, which is just an amazing story. And he shared with me the genesis of that organization, which was a very personal story about his brother passing away from hunger because his mother, chose drugs versus buying food. And so a very complicated story. And I said, we should sit and write about this. And so we started a series of interviews and I started to write this. And then at some point we stopped in like 2018, 19. I sat on that and just was like, I've got to finish writing this. I've got to make this happen. And I never did. So when I was laid off and I told my friend that Monday what I was planning on doing, I committed to writing an hour a day every morning. So I remember waking up like that Tuesday or Wednesday, a week later after I got laid off, and going to exercise, which I started to do again, and then sitting down because I had the time and I started to write. As time went on, I wrote for an hour, I wrote for 2 hours, then 3 hours, then I started researching. And then it's just this incredible brain dump of how I looked at culture within a large organization, how to structure it, all the things I learned, case studies, and I just started to dump it on paper. And I went from 1 hour of writing to literally 8, 10 hours of writing a day.
Jeez.
And I wouldn't stop. And so what I ended up having to do was create a dashboard for myself, or a tool that would force me to look at the progress I was making. And because of my corporate experience, I put all the Excel formulas, et cetera, together to help me, look at the value of my goals, and then whether I was showing up, whether I was making an effort every day to write, to exercise. And so then what I did was I created 3 goals for myself every day. And that was work out, eat healthy, and meditate. I needed to do those 3 things to get me to the point where I would finish writing and publish my first book, um, not knowing which direction I was going with this book. And then in that process, I mean, I built the website, I built a coaching model. The book that I finally published was not what I started with. It evolved into, I wrote about 3 different manuscripts. I finished the Elijah Project manuscript. I finished this book. I've got another manuscript that I did complete that needs total editing. And so that was what I threw myself into. And then I picked up a couple of clients and started consulting, and that's just how it evolved. I focused on discipline, consistency, and persistence. Those were the 3 values that I needed to create for myself to get these things done in the 15 months that I did.
Discipline, consistency, and what was the third one? Discipline, consistency,
Persistence.
and persistence.
Persistence.
3 things that my dad used to teach me, as a child, right?
Yeah,
Persistence is, or, repetition is the key to learning, and persistence is the key to success.
that's
So,
exactly right.
you basically, apparently that still flies, but, so would you say the book was kind of your launching pad, or was it the I'm going to say the key values that you put in place?
Yeah, I think both. Both. I would say it was my launching pad to to get out there and be an authority in something, right?
Okay.
And so because what's in the book are tools that I learned in my corporate development world, such as mind shift, mindset, resilience, setting up smart goals, understanding the will, just a number of things. And so what I did was I took those things that worked for me, both personally and professionally, and I put stories in there of how I leveraged those tools personally and professionally, to demonstrate that this is how confidence, for example. I mean, there's a part there where I talk about the imposter syndrome and how that impacted me in my career. How I would go to legislative meetings and just sweat profusely, um, because I didn't feel that I belonged in that room because of the things that had happened to me in my past. But the tools are how to overcome them. Here's how I overcame confidence, learning and always engaging and networking, right? Those types of things. And so the book then served as the roadmap of, here's some tools that help you find yourself and build yourself. And then I created a workbook that goes with the book. And the workbook is designed to really help you build your roadmap. Okay, so I just read the story, these tools and this guy who did these things, but now, how do I work through my limited beliefs, based on, what's in the book, and, what are your limited beliefs, right? And you kind of go through that process. And then the tool that I mentioned to you earlier called Stack Shift is really about, like the daily grind, the daily wins, meeting your goals every single day and being consistent about that and being persistent and watching the change happen if you are at it every single day. And then, I created a little chart on that tool to show you, your daily progress. And so those were the things that that I developed to help me accomplish and to get to where I was. And so the book was a catalyst, a launching pad, but then the tools are really the experience, the transformation experience, the total experience that hopefully will help people find their purpose.
So, what what types of users are you seeing kind of adopt this? I'm going to call it an output tracker tool of saying, "Hey, all right, Derek, me for example. Okay, what am I going to want to track in there? What is that turn to on the other side? Obviously, we're looking at trying to create discipline, consistency, persistence. I would assume some of that leads to an increased confidence, getting over the imposter syndrome or helping you fake it till you make it, whatever it is.
Yeah, look, the goal is to convert your passion into purpose, right? We all have
Okay.
something in us that we're passionate about that we want to share with the world. And and but a lot of us are just too insecure or not sure or understand how to convert that into something bigger or into something that gives us reason to wake up. And that's what I wanted to do with my time with this, with this effort. And I'll give you an example. I've been posting things on LinkedIn for a while, just videos, inspirational videos, wherever I was, etc. And it was weird. Somebody said, "Hey," somebody reached out to me and said, I've been following you. My kids and I have been following you on LinkedIn." I go, "Oh my gosh, that like wow, okay." Somebody like, really? That sounded different. And so he said, "I used to work with you in a different division. And we live, in the same state, and wondering if you wanted to come and have dinner. My kids would love to meet you." Thought, wow, okay, that's pretty neat. Um, and I knew he was, then I saw that he's connected to several people that I know. And I went over for dinner, and it was interesting because his his wife had been laid off for about, I think he said 2 years. And
Oh,
we started discussing the fact that she wanted to go back to corporate America to do what she was doing, and it was recruiting. I think executive recruiting. And it was really interesting to hear because it's something I hear and see with so many people. They're looking to get back, right? And they're not taking a step back in figuring out what it is about that makes them good at their work, right? And find the passion in it. They just want to go back into that environment and do what they were doing because it's comfortable.
yep.
So I remember that day. I'm like, oh man, what am I gonna say? Like like what? How do I? Here's my opportunity to coach somebody. What was interesting is we started to talk, and what I started to learn was that she had a passion for prepping people for an interview to get them to, here's how you should dress. Here's how you should talk. Here's how you should organize your notes. Here's how you should do everything you need to do to succeed in that interview. And I remember looking at her and saying, "Do you know how many people would love a coach who can help them prepare for the most important interview of their life in this moment?" And you build a website, reach back out to people that you connected with, reach back out to companies you've worked with, etc. And what happened within a few months, she had a few clients and realized that you don't need corporate America, right? She took something she's very passionate. It's like you almost had to go searching and digging for that
Yep.
to kind of bring it out and then talk through and understand how you might be able to then take that passion that you have and convert it into purpose to help the many. And so that is what my goal with all this is, through the book, through the workbook, through the tool is to help people through a process of finding that purpose.
It's almost like, excuse me, like corporate life has the box, the sandbox for you to go and play in, right?
Right.
The outside world doesn't have that box. You have to create that box. You have to put the wood together. You have to get the sand. You have to get the, shovels and dump trucks and pails. And that takes a lot of I'm going to call it mental capacity to like start to be like, okay, here's what I have to do. Here's what I need. Here's what I'm good at. Here's within this sand, I only like this particular type of sand, as opposed to
Right.
here's all of the sand that is just dumped from a gravel pit somewhere.
Right. You know,
Um,
it's the
yeah,
comfort zone versus it's being, we're all in a comfort zone, right? A lot of people in corporate America, we sit in a comfort zone and, it takes care of us and, we get a steady paycheck and, you go in and you do your job, you meet your goals and everything's great and you keep muddling through. When you are on your own, you've suddenly jumped into the discomfort zone and people don't know how to navigate the discomfort zone. But what people don't realize, Derek, is that the comfort zone is designed to catapult you out of it and into the discomfort zone until you make the discomfort zone comfortable again. So then you catapult out of that. And that's transformation.
and it's real
It's very real.
because now it's all we talked before, like in corporate America, there's always the, it's not my fault, it's theirs, pointing fingers everywhere else. When you're on your own, you only have one finger to point, and that's back at yourself, right?
That's
So
right.
it's like that transformation now gives you also the validation and affirmation that, look, I was disciplined and I was consistent with this, and here are the results from that. I got comfortable with the uncomfortable. And I use that saying all the time. You have to be comfortable being uncomfortable, especially in the outside world.
Totally.
Um, but once you get comfortable with something, you have to then, like you said, catapult into something else that makes you uncomfortable to continue making progress. And that discipline that you have already talked about is kind of what keeps you moving forward. Because I mean, if you're stagnant, you're dying. I mean, not literally, but you know, you are dying a slow death because other things around you are happening at a very, well, at their own pace. Let's put it that way. Some are going to happen at light speed. Others are going to take, a very measured, multi-step, multi-year approach. But if you go back and look at like your transformation, let's see, from, being laid off in 2024 to where you are now, I mean, what would you look at as like your success outcomes? What would you point a finger at and be like, I'm so happy with that? And everybody defines success differently, right? But it's like, what does Randy Martinez say? I am really proud of that.
I'm going to tell you this. This is, I the failures, the
Okay.
falls. Okay. Those those have been the toughest things inside of the last um, 17 months. And I am proud that I got through them. It has not been easy. And look, I will be the first to tell you right now, I am still in that transformation, right? Like
Sure.
we talked about, it never ends, right? When I wrote the book and it came out and it was published and they said, "Hey, it's now selling on Amazon and Barnes and Noble." I remember several people reaching out to me and saying to me, "That's great. Take it easy today. It's Friday. Rest. Go see some friends." But I hadn't solved the issue of how am I going to sell this book on my website? I haven't figured out the e-commerce component on Squarespace. And I need to figure that out tonight. And I was up till 1 a.m. that Friday, Saturday morning, trying to figure that out and testing what was coming and going, right? So it never ends. But I want to go back to answer your question because the the failures, the noise, I am very proud of that I've been able to work through that. And I'm going to give you some examples and throw these out there because this is I hope that people understand how brutal the world is, but if you stay focused, you can muddle through this, right? And so when I was so I was laid off. Uh, then I went on severance, and everything was okay. But I knew that the function that I was in was dying, wasn't going to come back. So I needed to do something, and this is where you start the reinvention and the pivot. I fast forward, I go through The company sends me a letter saying that they overpaid. I have to pay them $52,000 back. Send them a
Oh,
$52,000 wire. I reach out to a very good friend of mine who's a public persona, to get some guidance on, hey, I think I'm going to be publishing a book next year. I'm interested in how, what you can do and maybe, some guidance here. This person sat on the phone for an hour, 50 minutes or so, and berated me on how I am too academic, too cerebral to survive in this world. And it was painful. And there was another person on that call. And I remember getting off that call and my good friend saying to me, how did the call go? Was it great? And I said, it was brutal. It was painful. But I remember in that moment thinking, it's just noise. You got to get through it. Somebody's telling you can't do it. You have to put that aside in this very moment, as much as it hurt right there. Right. Then the severance was ending. I went on unemployment. Then I started to put a couple of business deals together through some friends who, were prominent business people. I went and sold and did what I needed to do to then get to the table and hear that we're not ready actually for that. Yes, you made it happen, but we're not ready. I'm like, oh my gosh, guys, you got to be kidding me. 2 deals fell apart.
just brick wall after brick wall after
Brick
brick
wall
wall.
after brick wall. Then my relationship ends. And then, it's just a series of things. The book gets delayed. And at this point, I'm like, I have to come out with that book to demonstrate that I am an authority in something that I do bring some value to the world, right? All that happened in the course of 15 months. And it was fall after noise, after noise, after denial. It's painful. It's hard. And you have to be able to muddle through it, because what happens when you come out of it, because there's always another side to an other side to it. You come out stronger, more resilient, and you're able to handle very difficult situations. Not the most difficult situations. You're always cultivating that. But that is what I have to say was the most valuable lesson to me through this process.
That's pretty much the definition of persistence. I
Is it?
mean, because a lot of people would hear, no once, give it another try, hear no again for whatever reason, maybe try a third time, give up.
You give up. Exactly. What's interesting when you think about an organization or a corporation, right? If you're not doing well on a project or in your role, HR will talk to you about it, and there's a process that's involved to help you course correct,
Yep.
right? To help you figure out how to
PIP, right? Personal improvement plan.
exactly, right? The personal improvement plan, right? And you go on that, right? And there are a series of HR steps and processes before eventually, if you're not delivering, you get terminated. That doesn't exist when you're here on your own.
No.
There were many days where there's a park nearby, and I would go, and I'll be the first to say this, and I'm not ashamed. I would sit there and cry and go, what am I doing? Why am I going down this road? Why am I putting myself through this? Do I really believe in myself that much? That is a real and scary thing, Derek.
That's a hard conversation to have with yourself, because it's like I go to therapy, every Wednesday morning, right? At least I have somebody to bounce, things off of, right? That's not my family. It's not my employees. It's not somebody involved in my circle, right? It's unbiased, and he can be a sympathetic ear when he needs to be. He can also be the, all right, what are you doing? The kind of the adversary, not adversarial, that's the wrong word, but at least something to try to be like, all right, you're thinking about it this way, do it this way. Cause it's all, you brought it up earlier. It's mindset, right? So it's like, you have to be able to, digest what you're taking in, whether that be success or failure, digest it appropriately and put it into what can be construed as the next positive use of your time,
Right.
right?
That's
Because even in success, like if you go back to, I was in the, I'll call it the hybrid corporate world for 13 years before I started Tremonti, right? And launched this firm at the end of 2018. You know, I tripled the business in 5 years, right? So I'm thinking, you're awesome, right? Take your foot off the gas a little bit, kind of coast,
Oh
right?
yeah.
And, you do. And now I'm, not that it hasn't grown, but it's like you look at what could have been if you just kept doing, kept the consistency, kept the discipline, kept the persistence, and now I'm getting back on that horse to kind of be like, okay, here's what, kind of led to those successes. Here's what we need to start doing again. And it's all here. It's all in between my ears of just being like, oh, okay, either, you're good, you're great, or you're bad, you're awful. There is really no happy medium, I don't think.
It is. It's look, I've also learned this, and to your point that, you know, I've hit I've hit a dry spot here lately. It's like, okay, which direction do I go? Because what I did was leading up to the book, I built the website, I built the coaching model. I started, that not I don't want to say podcasting, but interviewing people about
Sure.
transformation. Just building a lot of content, posting things online, right? Trying to create a social media presence. And now it's where do I go with this? And you hit a spot where it's like, oh my gosh, I'm confused. What next? Yes, I've got these things, but what next? And that happens and it's okay,
Yes.
right? It's just you stay consistent, you stay persistent, and you have the discipline to pick your lane and stay in your lane. Like find it, you'll find it, but you
And
gotta
don't be afraid to talk to other people about it.
don't be afraid to talk to other people.
It's like I have a great group of, granted we are all, we're all males, but we are all dads and we all own businesses, right? And it's like whenever any of us are going through that the confusion portion, we basically we'll call a little meeting at one of the offices, have a beer or a glass of bourbon, and kind of be like, hey, here's what I'm struggling with, on a business, whether it's business or personal, it doesn't even matter really. They're just good sounding boards. Chances are somebody's gone through it. you know it might not be identical, but it's similar. And it's like, okay, here's what worked for me. And then you don't necessarily have to follow that person, lockstep, but at least you can say, okay, within my own frame of business or personality or et cetera, here's what I can glean from that I can then use to jump over that next hurdle.
Right. You bring up a really good point there, regarding your group of friends.
Yep.
And, I stress that at the end of a few chapters in the book where, I say, I write to, and, telling people like, find your network, find whether it's a mentor, whether it's a friend, whether it's a group of people that are like-minded, because they will provide guidance, examples, and just kind of the next steps to help you get through the challenges that you're experiencing. We all need network. We all need that community. And that's kind of what the whole concept actually of the transformation circle is. It's we're all in it together. We're all challenged, but we all have something amazing. And so let's just connect and talk about it, and we'll find it.
Vulnerability is not weakness.
It's not weakness. No.
No, we've been conditioned for so long, especially, males, right? That vulnerability is weakness, showing emotion is weakness, that type of thing. And I don't think it can be farther from the truth, because you don't really get, I don't want to call it the answers you're looking for, but you don't really get you're not able to create your own roadmap if you don't understand what you are good at and what you are bad at. Not, and bad's probably the wrong word, but what you are not as good as you are as something else, right?
Right.
So, and it's like I heard a good quote. This was, years ago about the network, right? But it's your network is your net worth.
Right.
And I think that is a very powerful statement because it is very true. At least, I mean, in my own personal endeavors, right? Those are the people that I'm going to turn to anytime something is great or anytime something is not as great as I want it to be, to look for that, extra kick in the shin, to be like, okay, see what you're doing, respect it, you know, wouldn't be something I would do, or it's not something I would do. So then you're kind of getting some feedback on whether or not you're barking up the right tree.
Right. It's interesting about the network is the net worth. That's such a great quote. When you think about, uh, so I live in Rhode Island, which we're up near Boston, and Harvard, Cambridge is there, right? These big Boston schools. Um, the the one of the true real values of going to a university like Harvard is the
Yeah.
network of the alumni, the people that you can always reach out to and say, hey, I'm looking for this opportunity. I'm a so and so graduate of Harvard Law, Harvard Business, Harvard, undergrad,
Anything.
whatever it is,
Harvard, period. Yeah.
period, right? And I know a lot of people that I used to work with who were Harvard graduates, and they would tell me that that's the worth right there. I can reach out to anybody, and we connect and help each other navigate the world of business.
Yep.
So,
Yeah. And it's true. I mean, I went to University of Michigan, right? Which has, I think, the largest living alumni base in the world. And it is very true. Like I will get, uh, phone calls, from other alumni, or, whether they're looking for network piece or to become clients, because I am a Michigan grad, you know, and I've done the same thing on the other side when I was starting my career, talking with other Michigan alumni. And it is very true. People seek it out. I mean, it stands out on a resume, whether it's Harvard, Michigan, Tufts, Cambridge, et cetera. There are real benefits to the education system, whether or not you believe in the education itself,
right.
the network that it provides you with. It's like if I pull up my phone right now and I pull up the group text of college roommates, right? I have a, let's see, one, two, three physicians, so pediatrics, hand, and orthopedics, uh, a what do I want to call a trader? So somebody, an oil and gas trader, right? An energy trader,
Somebody,
um,
somebody betrayed.
a marketing person, and a restaurateur. So kind of but it's we're all walks. You know, everybody's successful doing their family thing, whatever. But it's like you look at that. I would not have met them had I not gone to Michigan. Could I have met somebody like them somewhere else? Absolutely. But we're in Michigan, New York, California, Minnesota, uh, Boston, and Washington. Seattle, Washington, right?
And that network helps you get connected to you kind of spider out from there, right? And
Oh
that's
yeah,
and that's it. And that's the everything behind your network is your net worth.
it's hugely impactful. But and I don't know. I mean, as I'm trying to think of this, like starting to sort of wrap things up here, what do you think? Whether it's somebody transitioning or somebody starting out, wanting to start a business transition, whether it's on their terms or not, I guess is my point. What points of transformation would you have? I think I already know the answer to this, but what points would you have them focus on before they've even said, I want to do this?
I think mindset is the key. The key there's mindset on working through your limiting beliefs. A lot of us that we believe we can't, for whatever reason. It might be all the noise in your environment, your family, your friends, the fact that you're just scared to be out in the world now, right? You've been laid off, or not even that. It's not even being laid off. It's just, you get to a point in your life where I'm tired of doing things the same way, right? What's the definition of insanity, right? Doing the same things over and over and expecting different results. Maybe you actually come to that conclusion at some point yourself, and it's like, I need to pivot in my life. And what is that pivot? And so, I think the mindset to make that decision is key. And then taking action, right? Building the I guess the goals, the things that you need to do to then find yourself. I hear a lot of on Facebook, hey, are you launching a coaching business? Let me, I'm going to show you how to get 10K a month, through this. But I think, how about finding yourself? Like, let's invest in you. Find your purpose. And you will see that it will your every day you will wake up so excited to do something you're so passionate about that will help others, inspire others, get other people excited. That then at that point, you'll find that path. That's just how the universe works.
Yep. I mean, if you're thinking about whether it's, starting a business or, doing your own thing, leaving a business, you kind of have to go through that mindset shift to see if you're even cut out. I mean, I don't say everybody can't do a business, but at the end of the day, everybody can't run a business. It's just
That's right,
there,
Derek.
there are people that are not cut out for owning and operating a or multiple businesses. Going through the mindset piece will tell you, I don't want to say quickly, but it'll at least tell you pretty definitively whether or not you've got what it takes to wade through all of those. I'm going to say things that are going to be put in your face. I mean, you went through them, here's the delay. We're not ready. Here's this, here's that, brick wall after brick wall after brick wall. It takes a special type of mindset to be able to work through that.
I so love that you just said that. One of the questions I get all the time about, well, who's this for, Randy? Who's your book for? Who's the tool for? Who's the workbook for? And my immediate answer is not everybody. Not
Yep.
everybody is ready to put the work in, to read, I'm working on the audio right now, or to listen to a book about personal transformation, to sit and write out the things that they need to do to change themselves, limiting beliefs, understanding their will, understanding and figuring out their real resilience, right? How to change their mindset. That takes time to build that roadmap for yourself. And then a tool to input the information, simple 1, 2, 3 into a tool to really make that takes effort. And I
Yes.
can tell you that not everyone, we think about it, but not everyone actually moves to make that effort. So no, my transformation experience is not for everyone. It's for the people that actually want to make it happen. And you have to have deep, strong will to want to make that happen. You want change.
100%. I mean, because, I see it all the time. I mean, I get people in here who want to start XYZ business. Like, oh, here's all of the, data as to why it's going to work and why it's going to be better than I expect. I always throw, one little pebble on the other side. Like, oh, that can't happen because it'll torpedo everything. You're like, you can't you can't run a business like that.
Right.
It's
Right.
not, that was just a pebble. That was like, oh, not a big deal. And you're already saying that's going to torpedo a business. It's like, well, if that little thing is going to do that, you don't have and you didn't have the ability to kind of think through it on the fly, you're going to have a tough time.
You're going to have a tough time.
It's
That's
like,
exactly
it
right.
reminds you of South Park. You're going to have a bad time. So,
Yeah.
Gonna have a bad time. So, we usually start to wrap things up at the end of every episode by giving guests, a few minutes to leave a message to our listeners, right? Whether it's you want to offer advice, expound on something else that's important to you, you know, whatever comes to mind, it's time for you to have the floor and give our listeners a little bit extra of what Randy Martinez and what transformation can do for you.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I didn't prepare for that one, but
That's the idea.
that's the idea. Um, I mean, what's on the other side of transformation is unbelievable. What's on the other side of you, is what I tell people all the time. It's like, it's when, if you look at the coaching model that I created, right? The foundation is discipline, consistency, and persistence. That's the foundation. And then there's this whole process to get with purpose at the top. And the process to get there is self-awareness, trusting yourself, building knowledge, understanding everything about you, breaking you down. And that's the hardest part for a lot of people. But you have to build that foundation that I just mentioned. Because if you can build that foundation and get and break yourself down and rebuild yourself, you get to your purpose. And what's there is the most amazing thing, because it's like you're sitting on a perch looking at the world going, wow, this is who I really am, or this is who I've wanted to be. And I'm beginning that journey now. And you're not going to become it overnight. You're going to get to a point where you're going to start the process. And that process is just going to evolve into something bigger and better and more amazing. And so the art of transformation, my book, is about that. It's really beginning to break yourself down. It's the concept of the phoenix, right? You burn yourself, and you rise from the ashes to become. And that's really what it's about. And again, it's not for everyone. A lot of people, there are so many people that don't want to look in the mirror and admit the things that they need to break to rise again. And that's okay. That is okay. But if you are that person, what's on the other side is amazing.
Yep. It'll bring you to a spot to do what you love, not love what you do.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. So how can our listeners find out more about you and get in touch with you?
Yeah. Visit www.randyrmartinez.com. You'll learn a lot about me on that site. I've got the coaching model that, if you're interested in really digging deep into this, I'm coaching some executives now who, left corporate America and are in that process of trying to really figure out what they do next. How to go through the withdrawal of corporate. I've got, some interviews that I do with people who have undergone some tremendous situations, such as cancer and, coming here from another country and, navigating life here in this country, and, how they've been able to succeed or at least get to a point where their life is pivoted. And then the book and the workbook and the tool, I highly recommend that if you are interested, download those tools. I'm going to be hosting some, not master classes, but hour-long sessions on how to leverage those tools, just to not let people get out there and navigate those tools themselves, but really help people through it. So,
all right. So that's all available at randyrmartinez.com. Love it.
that's it.
All right. Well, as you know, my name is Derek Dall'Olmo. I'm the owner of both Tremonti Financial Consultants and Tremonti Tax Solutions, together referred to as Tremonti. Tremonti bridges the gap between financial advisors and accountants by serving as CFO to our clients. We specifically love to work with business owners to develop a proactive tax strategy that maximizes after-tax profits. It's our job to help you earn more, be more efficient, and pay as little in taxes as legally possible. If this idea piques your interest, please go to TremontiTax.com and click on the Schedule Now button to book a 15-minute chat with me. With all that said, Randy, it was really good talking to you today. And for those listening, if you enjoyed today's episodes and had a few helpful takeaways, we'd love for you to leave us a review on Apple Podcasts and share this episode with other business-minded friends. This has been another episode of the Traversing Entrepreneurship podcast. We had fun today and hope you did too. Thanks again, Randy, for being here, and thank you for tuning in and listening.
Thank you so much, Derek.
This podcast is presented by Tremonte Financial Consultants, LLC. The firm is registered as an investment advisor and only transacts business in states where it is properly registered or is excluded or exempted from registration requirements. Registration as an investment advisor does not constitute an endorsement of the firm by securities regulators, nor does it indicate that the advisor has attained a particular level of skill or ability. The information presented is believed to be current. It should not be viewed as personalized investment advice. All expressions of opinion reflect the judgment of the presenter on the date of the podcast and are subject to change. You should consult with a professional advisor before implementing any of the strategies discussed. Content should not be viewed as an offer to buy or sell any of the securities mentioned or as legal or tax advice. Always consult an attorney or tax professional regarding your specific legal or tax situation. Different types of investments involve higher and lower levels of risk. There is no guarantee that a specific investment or strategy will be suitable or profitable for an investor's portfolio. There are no assurances that a portfolio will match or exceed any particular benchmark. All investment strategies can result in profit or loss.